Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Beaver? Dr. Carter?
Here.
Mrs. Eisenhart? Here. Mrs. Henry? Here. Mrs. Hume? Here. Mr. Sheets? Mr. Tomasi?
Mr. Tomasi let us know that he was going to be late. He had to work this evening until 6 p.m., so he should be arriving around 6:30.
Mrs. Walliser?
Here.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
6 present.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on to recognitions.
So thank you, Mr. Wagman. We have 2 recognitions this evening. We have the monthly New Heights Award. New Heights Award is essentially like our Employee of the Month. We get staff that are recognized, and then on a monthly basis pick 2 candidates to be the top candidates to be recognized. So the first one we'd like to recognize this evening is Mr. Lundy. Mr. Lundy is our art teacher at the high school. He is our art teacher brand new this year. Unfortunately, he was not able to join us this evening because his daughter is in cross country and they were doing a cross country banquet. But we thought we'd still recognize him this evening. So I will read the reason why he was recognized, and then we will hear from Mr. Barnhart. Mr. Lundy has done a phenomenal job working collaboratively with his high school art team. As a long-term sub last year, he ensured his students received instruction geared towards their interests as well as their curricular requirements. This year, as he continues to work with the art department, his insights and recommendations to improve the program is apparent. He is always thinking of new ways to incorporate the latest technologies and strategies. He attends to suggestions and ideas shared by his colleagues, and he takes those ideas and finds ways to incorporate them into the classroom practice.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Mr. Lundy came to us last school year as a long-term substitute filling for Ms. Schweitzer. Sorry. He exhibits excellent teaching qualities, and that is evident from when students and teachers come to us in the hallways and tell us how he's doing. That, to me, goes above and beyond, because hearing it firsthand, and not just seeing it firsthand, but hearing it firsthand from all of his students and teaching staff is what we desire for in an excellent teacher. He goes above and beyond for students every single day. It is very evident when he takes the students to BCIU art shows and all the various art shows throughout the county. They place each and every year. Last year, I know one of our students, Zane Abada, placed first place in his class for one of his pieces, and other students throughout the course of the year. So he's exceptional. We love to have him on our staff, and I wish we could have every one of him throughout our entire building, because he is just phenomenal. So thank you, and congratulations to Mr. Lundy. As Mr. Potter said, unfortunately he couldn't be here today. He is a dedicated father, so he is with his daughter at her banquet tonight.
Mr. Barnhart, if you don't mind, we will. I'll give the certificate to him. If you could just pass it on to Mr. Lundy.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mrs. Deb Levingood. Deb, if you want to come up here. Deb, I think most everyone knows Deb. Deb has been the most stellar elementary representative that we could have. She is always steadfast, always there, knows on top of everything. The recognition this evening is Deb is always willing to lend an extra hand as needed for guidance, not only in her own area of expertise, but assisting teachers and other fellow staff members as well as parents who have questions. And so, unfortunately, Miss Kelly wasn't able to join us this evening. She's actually doing interviews with Kutztown University for future intern perspectives for the school district. So, Mr. Volker, I believe you're going to share a few words on behalf of Miss Kelly.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be able to share a couple of words, but at the same time, I'm also very, I think the word is actually nervous for the first time ever, because this is one person that I don't want to let down ever. I think and I don't think I've ever said any of this to you, but since I've come to this school district, when I came here, I came as assistant principal. And Deb was the one running the office. And anytime I needed anything, I didn't know what was going on with X, Y, or Z, she was my rock. I mean, from day one, anytime I need to know anything that's going on at the elementary, how something works, who knows who, like what's the connection, how do I make something happen? Deb's the person I go to. And not just a resource for me, but for everybody within the elementary community. She's there every day, and you can count on her. You can depend on her. Everybody, from the students all the way through to our level, she is somebody that is 100% able to be counted on day in and day out. And I'm actually still nervous talking about it because I just don't feel as though I am going to convey just how much you're valued within this organization. And Deb, I can't thank you enough for everything that you do for our students and our staff.
Thanks.
Deb, how many years have you been with us?
25.
25 more, that's great. Congratulations.
Take care.
Deb is joined by her husband and her daughter today.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Next up, we'd like to recognize, as a lot of you know, tomorrow is election day. And we have 4 board members that have been serving in the district for quite some time and will be stepping off. So we have some certificates here of recognition. And each certificate says presented to the name of the board member in grateful appreciation of their number of years of dedicated service and leadership as a school board director in the Brandywine Heights Area School District. So the first one is to Mrs. Henry. Mrs. Henry, 2 years of service. Congratulations. The second one is for Mr. Tomasi. Mr. Tomasi has 3 years of service. He'll be joining us a little bit later, so we'll make sure he gets this. The next one is Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter, 4 years of service. And finally, the last one is for Mr. David Beaver, and that one is for 8 years of service. In addition, Mr. Beaver was presented with a recognition of an honor roll for 8 years of service with the recognized by PSBA. We'll make sure he gets that certificate as well. Thank you, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. And I'd just like to thank all the board members for their service, and all of your input has been valued, and we're going to miss you greatly. So, thank you.
And when you look at it, 17 years of collective service by those 4 individuals, it really is. And so I couldn't echo those comments more. That you guys will absolutely be missed, and I thank you for being partners with us and leading this community in this school district.
And there's always a seat out there for you. Moving on to student board representative reports. Tatiana?
On Friday, the elementary school celebrated Halloween. Students wore their costumes in the afternoon. Sadly, the scheduled parade with the intermediate school students, which was to be led by the high school marching band, was canceled due to the impending rain. The students still played Halloween-related games and activities. This Thursday, November 4th, the kindergarten students will celebrate the 50th day of school by having a 50s themed day. They will dance, make root beer floats, and complete activities that involve math and counting to 50. On Friday, November 19th, the elementary school will have their annual Little Shoppers Village from 6 to 8 p.m. Families are invited to come out to shop, take pictures with Santa, and visit the book fair and other vendors. All proceeds from the bake sale will be given to help a family in need. Sales from the raffle prizes and gift shop will support the PTC. Lastly, parent-teacher conferences will take place November 19th, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. During those days, students will follow an early dismissal schedule.
Thank you. Megan?
October 2nd's homecoming was a very big success this year. Our homecoming queen was Madeline Fedorowicz, and our homecoming king was Joan Cortez. The dance on Friday was very well attended, and the girls' soccer game on Saturday had some of the best attendance of the year. It was a great event put together by our student council and athletics. Wednesday, October 27th, the high school guidance department sponsored an evening with local private and public colleges, as well as with financial aid advisors to help our families understand a little more about the application and acceptance processes for colleges. Friday, October 29th, The high school held Halloween Town for our families. Activities, crafts, food trucks were all available for families at a fun family event. This Friday, November 5th, is our Powder Puff football game. Juniors will face off against the seniors for a fun night of competition on the flag gridiron. The Brandywine Clothing Circle will be handing out free clothing this Saturday, November 6th. Fall sports have come to an end, except for girls soccer, who play their district championship game this Wednesday at Hershey Park Stadium and advance to the first round of state playoffs on November 9th. Operation Christmas Child, a shoebox present drive, will be ending on November 15th. Winter sports will be in full swing starting in the coming weeks, with boys and girls basketball and boys and girls wrestling teams starting November 19th. The high school will be offering parent-teacher conferences on November 19th and from the 22nd through the 24th.
Thank you.
Megan said a little bit of the excitement with the soccer.
Just a little bit.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Lauren?
In the intermediate school, race-based education was last month on October 8th for grades K through 5, and students raised a lot of money and had a great time participating in this fundraiser. The intermediate school book fairs this week. Tomorrow is the book review, and they start shopping on November 3rd. Fourth grade students will begin designing the yearbook cover this month, and the intermediate and middle school students have been working to complete posters and essays for Veterans Day as well, because the Veterans Day Assembly and Luncheon will be held on November 11th. November 19th to the 24th are parent-teacher conferences for the intermediate and middle school. And Thanksgiving break is also just a few short weeks away. There will be an early dismissal on Wednesday the 24th, and school will be closed through the 29th. Students and teachers will return Tuesday, November 30th. In the middle school, Student Council is opening the middle school store tomorrow to sell items such as pencils, erasers, bookmarks, anything students might need. And then Wednesday, November 10th, the 8th graders will be attending a special assembly about the Holocaust. And then this month, from the 15th to the 19th, is our third Spirit Week this year. On the 15th is Camo Day. Tie-Dye Tuesday is the 16th. Western Wednesday is the 17th. Sports Jersey Day is the 18th. And we end the week with Flannel Friday.
Thank you very much. Is there any public comment? Hearing none. The one thing I would just like to say to the administration, I am very pleased with the testing, which you guys should be very proud of yourself having the rapid testing. That is huge. And congratulations on having that lined up, and that was awesome thinking on your parts. So
Thank you, Mr. White.
job well done.
We set that up. This is now going into our third week. We have 19 tests, not counting today's. How many were tested so far? We were one of the first in the county to implement that, and a lot of districts have reached out to us to ask how it's going, the procedures and training and things like that. So I appreciate that, because that was really the idea for behind this, was not necessarily to force anyone to get a test, just to provide an opportunity, knowing how challenging it is to find locations to get the rapid test. We really looked at it like a service opportunity for our community.
Mission accomplished. Job well done.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the Board of Directors report. Can I get a motion and a second?
Thank you. So just a few items on the Board of Directors report this evening. The first one is the meeting minutes from the October 4th meeting. Any corrections, edits need to be made to those meeting minutes? None heard, those will stay as presented. We have some policies on here. They're second reading policies. There were a few grammatical and spelling errors that had to be adjusted, so those were made already. In regard to the first reading policies, we have some specifically related to the financial aspect of our board policies. So just as a reminder, we do a multi-year review of our policies. We've gotten through the first wave of ever doing that, and now we're starting back up again. And we started with the financial ones originally because our business manager at the time was leaving, so that's why we started with that. So
hence we're picking back up again. And it's a great opportunity for Ms. Del Huerco to learn all of the school board policies related to finances. So, Nicole, I'll turn it over to you just to give a quick synopsis here of the new policies.
Yep, so items C, items 1 through 6, most of them are related to fiscal operations. Item 605, tax levy, as Andrew said, it's kind of a cyclical review. There are no changes. That goes as well as item 6, well, board policy 607 and board policy 608. Now we jump back to board policy 606, that's tax collection. That's basically some minor wording revisions, and revisions that simply clarify the collection entities that we are required to use, and also that we, outsource the preparation of the tax bills. And then we jump to board policy 808. It's kind of out of sync, but that is basically some revisions relative to the addition of the summer food service program that has now started. So we have to include that in our board policy because we're up for administrative review this year. And also the seamless summer option, which is what we're currently operating under, that includes free lunches for all students. So those are kind of the changes, and then some other modifications were just some food and nutrition operating regulations that were required to abide by as well. And then policy 918 is the renewal of the Title I policy. There were no changes.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on to committee reports.
Mr. Wagner, I'm sorry,
Yep.
I do have one suggestion on a policy on the procurement cards. I think it's for second review, so I apologize, it didn't dawn on me sooner, but when I reread it, the suggestion I'd like to at least toss out there, as we implement this policy, we talk about procurement cards only being used for authorized district purchases and not for personal purposes. It goes on to say the district retains the authority to pull the card back from the employee if there's an issue. I'd like to suggest that the policy be bolder and say not only will we remove the privilege, but that we will require the employee who has abused the card to immediately reimburse the district for any personal or unauthorized expenses. So it might be either a new sentence or just a comma and another phrase to really bolden the teeth in this policy, so that should we have an unfortunate situation where there's abuse, we, from a financial perspective, would have some legs to immediately expect that employee to reimburse the district.
So feeling from the rest of the board.
Mrs. Young, I just want to make sure we're on the same spot. Is that under guidelines, the second paragraph?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Everyone in agreement with having that added?
Mr. Pratt, is that something that we could work on some specific language and add that and provide that to the board? Would that need another round of approvals? Okay. So we'll add that to the December board meeting with some language that Mr. Pratt and I can work through.
Again, my apologies for not suggesting that sooner. So I guess what we need to do is pull this from the motion so that we don't vote on it tonight. We
Correct.
defer until next month.
Do that. We'll finish committee reports and then we'll go back to amend the motion. Committee reports. Mrs. Yoon.
Yes, good evening, everybody. The Berks County Intermediate Union Board of Directors meeting was held Thursday, October 21st. I've submitted a written report, which I think everybody has access to. I don't think there's anything in particular that's noteworthy, other than there's an item that talks about Brandywine established a professional services contract for professional development around the gifted program, which was a $400 contract. Maybe Mr. Potter at some point that might be in your remarks or updates. And then the only other thing that I wanted to draw folks' attention to, the IU has implemented a new practice as it relates to policies and all of the various policies that employees must be notified of. And so they put together sort of a cheat sheet, if you will, after a thorough review of their policy book. And basically, it's a form that identifies these are the policies that employees have received notification of, and then it allows the employee to sign off to help protect them. So I have copies of this. It dawned on me and several other of the county-wide district representatives that might be a good business practice for folks to consider. Obviously, we would consult with our own solicitor, and the policies that would be listed would not be these, as an example, but it would be the Brandywine policies that impact employees. So I did just want to draw folks' attention to that. It's a pretty straightforward process. It would occur annually, probably at the kickoff of the new school year, Mr. Potterman, when you meet with staff. But I think it would help ensure that we have a comfort level that everybody who needs to know and understand what's in each of those specific policies that they're required to know and understand have been properly notified. So just a thought.
Thank you for sharing that. In fact, we talked about that at a recent superintendent meeting for the county, and that document was shared electronically with us with some background discussion from Dr. Hackman. So thank you.
Fabulous. Yep, terrific. Now, other board members are aware of that, and you can decide whether you want to proceed or, other than that, the next meeting of the BCIU board is Thursday, November 18th. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. BCTC, Mr. Sheets.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ms. Bergman. BCTC held our meeting on Wednesday, October 27th. We held that at the East Campus. We had some old business, basically just some first readings of some different policies. Realistically, the only thing of note was we did receive back our audit report. It came back clean. There was a couple of things, but it wasn't anything like super major. It was just a little, hey, this might help doing this. The other thing of note is that we do not have a meeting in November. So we did pass a resolution just basically allowing administrators to pay the bills, keep the lights on, stuff like that. Essentially the same thing that we typically do for the month of July. Our next meeting will actually be held not until December 9th, and that will be our reorganization meeting, and that will be held at the West Campus over in Leesburg. That concludes my report.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
BEITC, Ms. Alberto.
Yeah, so I had nothing to report, except for the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 16th.
Perfect, thank you. Mrs. Walliser, Council on Legislative Action.
Nothing in the report.
Thank you. Dr. Carter, Policy Committee.
No changes, updates other than those already presented earlier.
Perfect, thank you. Strategic Planning Goals, Mrs. Eisenhardt. Negotiation Compensation Committee, Mr. Sheets.
Nothing to report at this time.
Alrighty, Building Construction Committee.
Just the next big hurdle has been passed in this building. We received temporary occupancy of the auditorium. So that basically allows this entire building to be occupied. And so we're now doing a lot of punch list items. We have a meeting tomorrow with all the construction primes and the architect to go through that process. The other thing I'd like to share with the board in your packets this evening, we've been talking about change orders and some of the frustrations that are associated with this project. Change orders that were, admittedly some change orders that things were just found behind the scenes. And when you feel part of construction, that's bound to happen. Some change orders that were missed items, but were necessary as part of the construction process. And then some change orders that were missed items that had really no value to the school district. And then the final bucket is kind of change orders that the district requested to enhance the project. And so there's 3 pages that the board has. The first one is, and all 3 were presented by KCBA. The first one is as of October 26th, where we are with the amount of project contingency, the amount of change orders, and then any credits that are associated. So as part of this project, there was a 5% contingency as part of the project. And then those are basically credits that they use. They're called allowances that can be used to offset some of these change orders. So as you see there at the bottom line, there's essentially $131,931 left over for allowances. Some of these allowances and change orders came out of the allowances, others were classified as direct payments. The justification for that really was just the way the architect drafted it up. Really, it didn't go either way. The nice part is that when this is all settled, any allowances not used or contingency not used comes back to the school district. So that is a good story. The second page is the change orders as they currently are drafted. There are still some that are lingering, but the total change order amount is $134,320. Those change orders are listed in the yellow with some additional detail on that far right column about what is specifically in the change order. So there are change orders in here, as I mentioned earlier, that are misses in terms of, for instance, the band hallway in this building was to get painted and it forgot to be added to the plans. And so that is a change order that was a miss by the architect, but it's still something that would have been part of the project and enhanced the project. So the reason I use that one as an example is the final document that you have in front of you is an excerpt from the contract. This is the entire contract is 24 pages. But what I did is just took the cover page and specifically page 23. Page 23 is the 4 categories that a change order can fall under. So the first one is an owner requested change order. So if you look at your document, an owner requested, this document was yellow, an owner requested change order would be like GC014. That's a STEM lab closet and extra door. So as we went through the project and we started to use the old LGI new STEM room, we realized that there wasn't a closet built in. And so there was a big duct that was right in the middle of where the door was going to be. It was going to cause an issue anyways. And we said, well, why don't we just add a closet there? It makes a lot of sense to have the extra storage because STEM has inherently a lot of different items that are associated with it. So that was something we asked to be added to it. And you can see the amount there. That was $10,000 for that change order. So that's the first type, would be owner requested change order. The second one would be something called an unforeseen or concealed condition change order. So if they're working, they find a beam in the middle of the project. That would be a great example of that. So when you look at G003, cut beam in the CMU pockets, that was one where when they went through, they had to add, the elevations were different. They opened up the wall. They had to do some additional work onto that beam based off of the existing conditions. So that's the second one, an unforeseen or existing concealed condition change order. The third one is something called a value added change order. And that goes back to that paint one I had given you the example of earlier. That paint one is listed as GC006, paint corridors C13, C14, and stairs. So that was something that should have been added. The conceptual idea behind this change order is that if it was in the project from the beginning, there would have been an inherent additional cost built into what the bid was. And so this change order, value-added change order, says essentially that the district still owns the cost for that, but there is the architect is responsible for 15% of that change order. And the 15% is derived from any change order. The contractors can add a 15% surcharge onto these change orders. And so essentially what the architect is doing there is taking the responsibility for that additional tacked on 15% change order fee. And so the value added change order is the one that if there is an issue that happens that would have been part of the project, then we own the cost for it, but the architect picks up the 15% change order fee.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. So we're paying 100%, but the contractor gets to charge an extra 15% that he's charging to the architect.
He charges us, we pay it, but based off the contract, the architect is responsible for that 15%.
But when everything nets out,
Yeah.
we're paying 50%, we're paying 100%.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the final one And this change order, as I mentioned, there's still some more to come. So this one's not on the list, but it's a good example. It's called a no value change order. And so this change order is a change order that the STEM room is a great example. So if you remember when we were in the LGI, it had step stairs that went up. So they marked the ceiling at a certain height. They marked that at the height of the big base floor. And they didn't mark any other elevations for the ceiling. So when the construction company came in and built the ceiling, they built it at that floor height ceiling, and it came across. So by the time you went up the stairs, I could touch the ceiling, which was a problem. So they had to rip the entire ceiling down, all the lights, all the HVAC that was already installed, and move it all up to the height that it should have been, which was that height designated on the main floor should have been the height designated at the very top, which would have raised the whole thing up. So that is a no value change order. We would have still had the ceiling. We still would have had the HVAC. We still would have had the lights if it was built properly and spec'd properly. So in that circumstance, the contract calls for the architect to be responsible for all the costs associated with that change order. So if you recall last board meeting we were together, we talked about the change orders, talked about the frustration of some of the lack of detail causing these change orders. I wanted to make sure the board understood that these four categories, how they're delineated. We met with our legal firm, our solicitor, and went through the concerns. We received some advice back to say, let's make sure we go back to these change orders, classify them in the four buckets appropriately. The next step will now be to go back to the architect firm and say, okay, these are the value adds. To Mr. Sheets, to your point, here's the 15% that you owe us because we paid this. Now you owe it. And the other ones that we're going to have to contend with are those no value change orders, like I mentioned earlier, that example of step ceiling, that will have to be completely the cost burden of the architect. So that's the next step we're at right now. I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of what was happening behind the scenes with these change orders and some of the detail associated with the contract connection there.
So some of this 134,000 is not been paid out yet? Is that, like, are some of these non-value added ones? Or is this stuff that's already?
No, most of these are value added. The non-value added would be the STEM, like the STEM room. That's not on here though.
Like the rough opening too small for the scheduled door, that doesn't seem like that would be our fault. It seems like $10,000, they should have measured the door and opening the same.
Which number is that?
GC 019. The comment.
The 19.
Yeah. It says word for coming.
Yes, that one is, you're right. That one's still in progress.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one's still in progress.
Okay.
And that's what's kind of, admittedly, that's what's hard to follow with this document.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's hard to follow, I'm sure you figured it out by now, but this seems to be a real long Excel.
Yeah, I could see where some of them are.
And so it flips over and transitions and keeps going. And but you can see where KCBA clearly put on here what their omissions were.
Is this their document?
This is their document.
I love how the error has nothing though.
Right.
They're not gonna admit to that.
No.
So so it looks like these are coded differently. So you got GC, PC, MC, right? And
Yep.
MC, but yeah, no, MC. So, and there's different totals for each of those. So like just doing some quick math, I mean, it looks like we're actually closer to like $200,000 in mistakes. While I appreciate KCBA obviously going through a lot of work to create a document that's almost impossible to decipher, is there any way we can actually get it for real total? Because honestly, this is kind of unacceptable. I mean, like, yeah, it's great that they're covering the costs, but what was the time constraint? Like, how much time did it cost us for them to tear everything down and build it up? Because the person that's supposed to be watching this stuff on scene for them just didn't seem to realize that that's not the correct height at the top, because I guess apparently he doesn't know how to read a tape measure, right? So can we get something that's a little bit clearer to understand and give us an actual number that we, and actually breaks down into those buckets so that it's easy for us to then disseminate also during a board meeting so everybody understands where we're coming from. And I don't mean to be terse with you.
No.
So I understand.
It's
you're doing
frustrations that we all
absolutely best you can,
experience.
But this is a level of frustration with this company that is just amazing right now. So, yeah, like I said, I appreciate the work that they put into this, making this obtuse, but like, we do something clear, that'd be awesome.
Right. I agree with you. I went through the GC's change orders tonight. Well, they're all built in with that document, but it's very cumbersome to read. I agree with you. I'll work on getting a better document for you for next meeting.
Okay. I mean, and honestly, like, stuff happens, right? Oh, we saw that with the elementary school. You know, you open something up, you're expecting something to be there, and it's not, right? But it seems like an awful lot of this is 100% like, you're a professional, we hired you for a professional service, and you are not upholding your end of the contract.
There are a lot of, in my estimation, a lot of errors that have occurred because of the design spec that was not clear.
It seems like lack of communication between their on-the-floor person and their GC. Like, whoever was on the floor daily, it just sounds like it wasn't watching what was happening too. So.
And so the way that they're supposed to do that is if there's an on the floor question and the person, the architect rep is not here, they're supposed to do something called an RFI, request for information. That communication was lagging. There is oftentimes going to be 2-3 weeks till the architect or till the construction workers got an answer.
Yeah.
So that held up things.
Well, self-reception is not the best.
We should give them the Wi-Fi passwords. So they can
Maybe that's what it was.
Just a quick reminder, what is their fee? What is the percentage fee on the contract for KCDA for their services?
I don't want to say something in public that I'm not 100%, but ballpark about 5%.
Okay, so about 5%. So we are looking at like $250,000 on this contract, and they couldn't staff us for the 180 days of the contract that's over here. Like that's my concern, you know, because the statement that was made by the principal when they came out was, oh no, nothing's going to happen like the last time they were here. And admittedly, they didn't leave the roof open and allow the gym floor to get destroyed, but that's not a standard. Like that's below the actual floor. Like that's you know, that's not a standard at all. So I don't know. Like I said,
I think somebody needs to be held accountable.
I agree. And I just, like, again, I just don't understand, like, what options or recourse we have in terms of renegotiating their percentage at this time. Because none, despite the fact that they really have not.
We have those provisions in the contract, and those provisions we will follow when we come to the conclusion of this, and we will ask for the funds based on, you know, even though they may classify it one way, we had discussions with Andrew, and we may want to reclassify it a different way. So
Okay.
those discussions will come through.
So we have to pay out the contract. We can't short pay for the mistakes.
Those will be discussions we have at the end. That's the way it's always been done.
I don't know, better and better. So, okay.
And I don't just mean here, I mean elsewhere.
Oh, I know, I understand, but I mean, like, as a private citizen, if you're, you know, if you have someone come to work on your house, typically that 10% is withheld until completion of the job, right?
And
So-
they're doing that with the contingency that you have already in place.
Okay, all right, right on, so we are doing that,
Yep.
right on.
So you mentioned categorization, and Andrew, I appreciate this document, even though it is a little bit complicated to process. The 4 categories that you mentioned, initially, as you started explaining, they aligned with what we have in front of us. The owner requested category, and then the unforeseen conditions or concealed conditions category. Then I started getting lost. Their next category is omission. You talked about value added. Are those the same, just different language?
So that their category language of omission, error, and miscellaneous is different than what the contract is. And so I was clear when I met with the architect rep that's on site that said, these are the ones that you're classifying it maybe as an omission or whatever. I'm saying this is a value added, or this is a whatever the contract language is. I'm very clear in using the contract language to define those.
Okay, so there is a discrepancy even in terms of how these items are being titled
Yeah.
not just which category they go in, but the label of that category.
That's right.
Okay, so I agree with you that the labels in the documentation that they provide us should align with what the contract says, which is what we all agreed to at the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay,
And I've raised that question to them already.
Okay.
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Andrew, on the mission, value added, whatever.
Yeah.
category, is there any way to determine what those items would have cost if they were bid on the contract? Because I'm sure it would be less than a change order.
It's exactly the argument I had with, when they present an item and say, well, this is a value add, because, yeah, I get it, that this is the cost that they're now charging us because it wasn't in and the fee in there. I said, but you know darn well that if this was included in the bundle package, it would have been a lot less. It would have been a lot less. So to answer your question specifically, I don't know really how we can put a dollar amount on it because it would have been part of a bigger bundle package, but I do share your frustration of it. It costs us a lot more on the tail end to add something or to make changes for a miss now than it did if we would have had it right up front.
That's the 15% number, because the presumption is that any type of change order is going to cost you 15% more, that's the 15%.
Yeah, it's more than that, right?
Because unless it's like this year.
Yeah.
Those will be discussions, because if you look at the language, those are discussions, because you have to look at the additional cost, what it would be, so you have to go through that process towards the end. Okay?
I'm equally frustrated. I share your concerns. I share your frustration, and that's why we have been working with KKL to stay on top of this.
And Mr. Potter, just to make sure that you understand, like I said, this terseness, although it's directed at you because I'm speaking with you, this terseness isn't a reflection on the job that I think you're doing. I think that it's it's a huge effort to try and keep track of this stuff with a partner that does not seem to be making the mark, right? Somebody that would be on an improvement plan if they were one of our employees. So I just want to make sure I accept that because, like I said, I understand that we can come across a little rough on this. It's not a reflection on you. It's our anger directly at Casey.
I completely appreciate that, Mr. Sheets, and I appreciate the frustration everyone's experiencing and your comments, because those are the same ones that I experienced and have relayed to the architect. Ms. Bruner can attest that she knows that these conversations are extremely awkward, and she usually walks away. And I have these extremely awkward conversations, very challenging, tough conversations with the architect, just saying this isn't right. I've been challenging them every step of the way. So I share your frustrations, believe me.
Yeah.
Any additional board discussion?
Sure.
Mr. Sheets, could you amend your motion to remove B12?
Yes. Yes, sir. That was the one that we were pulling out for language revision. Yes, sir.
Policy 25 for group card. Yeah.
Could I get a roll call on everything except for B12?
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mrs. Wallheiser?
Yeah.
Mr. Wagman?
Yes.
7 yeas, motion passes.
So need a motion to have that policy. No, you're good.
It'll be bad next time.
Yeah. Got it. All right, moving on to business and operations. Can I get a motion in a second?
So move Sheets.
Second.
So to begin, items A through, I would say C, are to approve the bills. So item A is general fund, and that would be through November 1st of $2,724,554.55. Item B would be the food service fund, totaling $37,482.37. Item C is the construction fund, totaling $826,366.57. Item D, there is no activity, but it's still on the agenda, capital reserve fund, $0. And item E, items 1 through 7 are the revenue expense reports. Item 5 is the investment schedule. Item 6 is the student activity and trust fund, which is little activity, and item 7 is budget transfers, there's nothing to report. Item F and G, special ed and youth services and curriculum technology, there's nothing on the agenda for this evening. And item H is facility and maintenance, and we're gonna go over some change orders, and I'm gonna turn it over to Andrew.
So these change orders that are listed here this evening are included in your document we just had. Those change orders include some drywall work for the duct work as listed. The STEM lab, I talked about that earlier, about adding that STEM wall. There is a significant cost for demolition scope. This actually change order occurred way back at the start of the project, May, June. And it kind of lingered throughout the summer. This is for the change order, which I provided the board in email, is like a 30-page change order. It has a bunch of different additional things that were missed in the scope of the demolition work. Tile work, ceiling and ceiling grid that had to get removed, some walls and wall covering that had to get removed, with new wall covering up. And it happened basically throughout the entire scope of this building. Some things in the wrestling room, some things in the trainer room to make room for the new bathroom, some things down here in the custodial closet, some in the cafeteria. But that is what that change order is for, all the additional demolition work that had to occur to get us ready. Item D is for fire valves and new cabinets that had to be installed that were not included as part of the project. We had to reroute sanitary lines and some storm water lines. That is the plumber contract. J.R. Reynolds is a plumber contract. And then item F is to replace a leaking fitting. This didn't really have anything to do with the project, but as they tore open the wall actually right down here on the ramp going to the business office, there was a leaky drain pipe. So we just had to fix that while they were working. And that concludes the change orders for this month that have been presented to the school district.
Mr. Potter, quick
Yeah.
question on that last one that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
If that work, that repair has nothing to do with the project, does it make sense to exclude it from the project and just categorize it as a separate repair under our normal facilities operations budget and pay J.R. Reynolds outside of the project?
So from the perspective, how do I put it? Common sense perspective, yes, that makes a lot of sense. But because it's part of the project, and because it was a change order to do that work officially through the process, that's why we have it listed as a change order. So we had to sign off to say that we're gonna approve the work to be done. That's why it comes up as a change order. So there's really not a way to get around that. We have a contract with J.R. Reynolds for the work here. We didn't have them to do the work kind of separately outside of the scope of the project.
So I understand what you're saying. Let me ask the question from a higher level perspective. Are there others like this where they really had nothing to do with the project? It's just repairs that were uncovered and the timing made sense to get it done while, they're digging around in there. I feel like those expenses should be at least categorized. If they're gonna fall under the budget of this for the reasons you just articulated, so be it. But at least I feel like there should be an asterisk or footnote that says X dollars of the scope of this project really were outside of the scope. We just made a business decision to deal with it at the current time and within that budget.
Yeah.
But I think they should be flagged so that we have a handle on it.
Fair enough, and that's the only one that comes to mind.
Okay.
But we can do that.
Okay.
And we can reflect that in the meeting minute notes too, just so that's reflected that way.
Back to me. So item 2 is to approve the agreements with AJ Morrow Company for the following items for business H2A to H2G. Item A is for the exterior stage doors, at a cost of $1,280. This is to repair the middle school stage doors. Item B is, again, exterior doors, to replace the exterior doors, and that's between the boys' locker room and the weight room. Item C, again, door related, replace the cylinders on the 2 exterior doors. Item D, is actually at the high school at a cost of $7,135 to replace the electronic panic hardware, and add a center million on the exterior card access door. And item E is to replace the panic hardware and add a center million to the 3 pairs of exterior doors. That's all one project. And then off to item I. This is to approve a 2017 Ford Transit 9-passenger van with 42,000 miles from Brandywine Transportation in the amount of $24,000. If you look at the current, supply and demand of vehicles, it's almost impossible to get a used van at a reasonable price. Just to put it in a little bit of perspective, if I would find something compatible today, it would probably be in the high $50,000 for a compatible van. And this is kind of to get us caught up on the vehicle replacements. Currently, the free service van is out of service and would cost significant money to actually have it pass inspection. So we're sharing with the maintenance department, kind of coordinating use of the van. So item J is to approve the 2022 F-350 truck via CoStars. And the reason why we're doing this now is I think last year, if I'm correct, this came up and we were going to use surplus money from the end of last year over this year to purchase it. The timing of this, if we lock in this, we'll get this price if we lock in by November 12th, I believe it is. And also, just, as everything else is, there is a huge lag time. We're lucky if we get it in May and June, which is the end of our fiscal year. So if we prove it today, hopefully we'll get it this year and can expend it in this year. So that's at a cost of $46,000. And this will replace the 2005 F-250 that's kind of been hanging around. Those are vehicles between 2016 and 2020, so this one's kind of well overdue. And again, it's rough-king, won't pass inspection at the end of this year. So item K is to approve a proposal from TransFinder. That's our routing software for migration, implementation, and training costs to go to basically, now we're on their older system. We VPN into their network, kind of one user at a time. So if I want to access it and take pages on it, we can't do it at the same time. And it's kind of centralized, but they're discontinuing the VoIP service or their old version. So we have to upgrade to the new web-based version. But obviously, the training and implementation, there is a cost for that of $9,250. The annual cost will remain the same. And some kind of neat features that we have GPSs on the buses. We'll be able to utilize those, for winter weather. There's also some other add-ons that we can use down the road, parent apps. You can get alerts when your stop's coming, or the bus is running late. All that can run through a parent app, and they can see where their child's bus is. So there's a lot more features that we, if we choose to, proceed with down the road, we have that option. So item L is to ratify an agreement with Frontline Technologies related to recruiting, hiring, and Frontline Central at a cost of $14,000. That is one-time startup cost of $8,500, and then the annual licensing of $5,700. So recruiting and hiring, that portion would replace our talent ed. Again, trying to bring all the systems, under one system so they communicate, reduce the dual entry of multiple systems. And then Frontline Central is part of, the board goals to optimize organizational efficiency and to digitize our personnel files. I think that is everything for business and operations agenda.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I have a question around food service. Can you give us, I don't know if this is for you or Andrew, but update on how food service is handling right now? I only get feedback from my kids, but I know that like my son is in sixth grade, he's come home saying he didn't get extras because there wasn't enough food and they're kind of restricting. So where are we in the food service sector?
Yeah, so there's a lot going on and there's a lot anticipated on going on. Currently right now, there's a lot of items that we cannot get. So you'll see the menu is pretty much, your meals and a couple a la carte items. And there's a lot of behind the scenes reasons behind that as far as nutritional reporting, working with the nurses, just make sure that, and a lot of reporting to the state as far as nutritional content, whatnot. So it is a very limited menu. I think in prior years, you've had more a la carte or snacks, whatnot, and there's a lot of shortages. I'm obtaining those or obtaining them at a reasonable price, I should say. You should probably buy them, at retail, about probably 2-3 times what we would typically pay. And there also is a staffing component to that. If you're down a person on certain channels at a time. So there's that piece. And then also, I guess looking ahead, the food shortage is only going to get worse, especially into the first quarter of next year they're anticipating. And as far as, cutlery items, we were talking about today, just, plasticware, it's going to become an issue. So it's kind of, make it through 1 week. We have a lot of contingency in place as far as, if we can't get produce or meats, kind of what we're going to do at this point.
So do we know kids are getting enough to eat at lunch? Because
yeah, so
I know I can send food in for my kids, but we have a lot of kids that don't have that luxury.
Yeah, so I would say there's plenty of food of what we're offering. I would say the variety is not robust, but I'd say there's probably 3-4 options, and obviously if the child has, special needs. As far as a meal modification, we're willing to do that. And the other cafeteria managers do a phenomenal job, and they kind of know the kids, and work with them and the parents and the nurses. There's plenty of food, just I would say that the variety is not there right now, because we kind of go with what we know is readily available.
It is concerning that it could get worse.
Who's the other one, Ms. Dugworker? We heard today that there could be milk shortages.
Yeah, so.
That was the most recent one.
I mean, I feel like we live in such an abundant food area. We are lucky, I know we utilize some local farms, like beef bins for apples and things, but what else can we do? Is there a way we can utilize other farms to do anything? I mean, especially with, we have, the kids don't pay for lunch anymore, but and that's a luxury, but I wouldn't mind paying for my kids' lunch if I needed to, if to get more food available. So I don't know.
Yeah, as far as from a local level, I think we're very lucky where we live, being in Berks County. As far as our dairies, we use Clover Farms, and I actually kind of made a note to reach out to them when I saw that email tomorrow, to see kind of where we're at. But I think us in comparison to the rest of the state or the rest of the country, we are very fortunate and we're doing just fine. But see if they have any forecasts into the future of what they think. But as far as Berks County, Lancaster County, there's a lot of farms that produce fruits, vegetables. I think we're pretty good there. Obviously, there's just short shelf life. The only thing that we really can't do is stock up on fresh meats. There's a lot of USDA regulations that we really can't get around for that. So.
Also, additionally, I think it needs to be said that there is, there's guidelines on what you serve. You have to serve a certain weight of protein. You have to serve a certain amount of vegetables. You have to serve a certain amount of dairy.
The cheese sticks my kid got for lunch, that was really healthy.
Well,
I mean, he loves it.
Yeah, I mean,
but
I think that's a little unfair because it really does boil down to the federal government sets the guidelines. USDA sets the guidelines on what's considered an appropriate amount of food. I mean, case in point, the amount of protein that you give someone in middle school is the exact same amount of protein that you're supposed to give a high school student, right? And I think it works out that it's 2 ounces or something. It's something just ridiculous. That you would think that a 6th grader is gonna consume and be full with the same amount as a 12th grader, and it's actually more the other way. The 12th grader is gonna be able to get filled up on what we're feeding the 6th grader. So it's not that like anybody's getting shorted, because we are providing to that level that is mandated by the government. You know, if a child wants extra food, I mean, like, come, you know my son, he's a bigger kid, right?
Yeah.
I sent him to school with sentence, because I know that the amount of food that he's gonna get here isn't gonna necessarily carry him throughout the day, and I also wanted to have some healthier options, you know, so I sent those along.
It's just not anything I've heard before him come home and say, and when he said it, it made me think, there's gotta be other kids out there that
Oh,
are
absolutely.
struggling with this issue, and I just wanna know the surrounds of it, so.
Well, if you can keep us posted then on what you find out as far as shortage from, our main suppliers, Phillips Farms, speaking of the shortage, just update us on where those suppliers think they'll fall for the balance of the year, just so we are all abreast of contingency plans that are needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And although they do get the 1 free meal, I just want to say, like, a lot of kids do buy 2 meals. Well, they get 2 meals. So you don't get the free one and then they'll come back and get another one. So I mean, there's definitely enough food if, your son wants 2 meals.
Yeah, well, trust me, he could be telling me half the story, it's not all.
Yeah, so an opportunity is there.
No, but it's a very valid question. I think that, are we in the same situation that we were, I know at the beginning of the year, it was a bit scary at the beginning of the year. You know, we had vendors that were canceling orders because, for whatever reason, the cynic in me is because it's actually, they're gonna make a larger margin selling to a commercial entity versus selling to a public entity. Or maybe there just wasn't enough food. But I think, are we still in the same kind of situation that we were at the beginning of the year, or we're easing up on some things and other things are then having issues?
I'll say it's kind of twofold. I mean, initially when it happened, it's more of the culture shock. Like, wow, this is really happening, kind of, what do we do? So now we've learned to plan around it. And I would say kind of the first Lehigh County, a lot of our food comes from the Lehigh Valley hubs, the major suppliers. We're doing fairly well for the rest of the state, and I say relatively speaking. But that could decline. They're getting a lot of support, from the state and whatnot. So I mean, 2 weeks from now, it could be a different story. All that support could be kind of pulled out. So.
I have a quick question, different topic, so I don't want to, we're done with food, okay. Just clarifying question about the van that we're about to purchase before the middle of November. So we execute that sales agreement. Did I hear you say we don't expect to take possession of that vehicle until May?
That's the truck.
Right,
truck.
the brand new truck with the plow thingy and
Yeah.
the spreader and the $50,000 truck. We're executing now, and then it's gonna take a good 6 months plus to arrive.
That's correct.
Wow, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And that's obviously why we asked to put it on this month, because we were going to wait a little bit later into the year. Just with the demand, we wanted to try to get it still within this fiscal year.
And from what I understand, they're having a hard time maintaining this line, so.
Well, there's a chip shortage.
The van, if the board remembers, we approved the van back in the spring. We still have not received that van.
Yeah, if you would just, keep us posted on, just because everybody knows the supply chain is so messed up. It's helpful, because we'll lose track, and, so
It gives
you
you some
just let us
talking
know.
points too, to say, hey, we ordered this thing and it came in 7 months later.
Yeah, we can just celebrate when it arrives.
All right, could get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Eisenhart?
Yes.
Mrs. Henry?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Tamasi?
Yes.
Mrs. Walliser?
Yes.
Dr. Carter?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to superintendent report. Could I get a motion and a second? Oh, that's right. We have nothing under superintendent, so we'll skip over that. Personnel report. Could I get a motion and a second?
So move, Sheets.
Second. Courtney?
So, going through the personnel report, we have the co-curriculars. Now, you'll notice there was something a little bit different this meeting. You had the resignation, so there are a few staff members that were coaches that have changed for different reasons.
So those are noted at the bottom of that spreadsheet, and that's why personnel C4A is actually the same one listed a little bit later under C4A, but it's really not. It's A1, obviously. So there are a nice job by the staff putting that together, so the board can just kind of keep track of some changes within the coaches. We have a change of status for our full-time, or she was a part-time library aide, now going to full-time. And the reason for this is linked to some of our staffing issues, which I'll talk about in a second. But Miss Everly was originally hired as the elementary library aide, working primarily in the afternoon because that's when the specials are. And we tried to find a high school library aide because we also needed that. And unfortunately, we had someone hired. They admittedly never showed up for work. And so kind of left us in the loop of where do we go from here, and advertised, couldn't find anyone. And so Miss Everly is going to be able to be the high school library in the morning and be able to be the elementary library in the afternoon. She started that October 18th, as you can see here. So this is a retroactive approval, but she, in talking with her, it's going very well. She's able to manage both areas, be able to manage the schedule. So that's really great news to hear. From the appointments perspective, we have Mr. Tyler Kemp. Mr. Kemp is a Brandywine graduate with us a few years ago. He has been doing a phenomenal job at the high school, serving in one of the long-term sub-intervention specialist roles with ESSER funds. An opening came up with one of our learning support teachers here in this building, in the middle school. And so he's going to become a contracted position, taking over that learning support position here in the middle school. We have C4A, I spoke about earlier, so that document also has all the appointments for winter coaches. We have the event staff workers, and so there was a little bit of confusion on that, and I apologize for that. There was staff listed behind some staff members and others not, and so we removed that staff piece. That was an internal document that got left on there by accident. And the reason it was on there was the staff designation let us know if we had to do clearances or not, and so that was a mistake. I apologize, but these staff members, the event staff workers, are used to support when there's large events. So these aren't used every game. They get paid $40 a game, but they're really used if there's really big events that happen, and either Mr. Geis as the athletic director or assistant athletic director need some extra hands at the event. If you recall, we don't have a security firm anymore, and so these people are to help maintain kind of the flow of the order, to help, and we've been having some great participation at events, so this is the staff reason for that. We have 2 leaves, an unpaid medical leave for a food service staff member, and then 2 is a professional development sabbatical leave for a high school staff member. So final thing I'd like to just point to you in your documents is a staff vacancies document. So I thought I'd just run through. There's been a lot of discussion within the community and even the broader community about staffing shortages and the challenges that school districts are having, challenges businesses are having. My wife and I were talking about this weekend, and we came across a document that said, I think the number is 4.3 million people have left the workforce the last quarter. It just is amazing the amount of, you hear about this great retirement pandemic that's happening as a result of the COVID pandemic, and we are definitely seeing some of those impacts. So just to kind of run through these, we have 5 professional staff vacancies right now. So one of them is an intervention specialist. That is a role at the elementary school. I talked about Tyler Kemp in the intervention specialist role he had at the high school, taking the contracted position that opens up that intervention specialist role at the high school. We're also looking for a learning support and a mathematics learning support or a long-term substitute position. So that's a position that we're looking for. And it's listed as a learning support in mathematics because we're looking for that person to have both certifications. A physics and general science teacher. So that position is open right now. That is being filled by Mrs. Cassidy Conrad. So we have a teacher in there. She's doing a phenomenal job. But we're looking for someone with that certification to fill that more permanently. And then the last one is a family consumer science position, which is a half-time position that we've been trying to fill since this summer. So again, it's another one of those that we've had a few staff members flow in and out of there, potential candidates, I should say, and for different various reasons, they didn't work out. We have some support staff vacancies. We're looking for nurse, RN, and LPN positions, substitute positions. Food service substitute positions are needed as well. Both of those, the nurses and the food service, we don't have any substitutes available at all at this point. So that's definitely a pain point for us. Our new paraprofessional company is ESS. At this point, there are still 12 paraprofessionals that are needed to fulfill that contract of 40 paraprofessionals total. We are able to to get by right now based off of a priority list, and Dr. Reese has been on top of that. In fact, ESS has a director that is on site. They're positioned in the next office next to Dr. Reese, so she's able to communicate them basically on a daily basis. SOS Group fulfills our custodian and crossing guard needs. We have 2 crossing guards we have 3 crossing guards total we should have. We have 1 right now, but there are 2 that are needed. And so when a crossing guard is out, like currently the situation is, that means a lot of internal staff are backfilling. Mr. Volker has done crossing guard duty. Mr. Farina has done crossing guard duty. Custodians have been helping out with crossing guard duty. That's kind of how we're making sure our students are safe, because the safety of our kids getting across that street at Herman's is a priority.
Mr. Potter, for the crossing guards, have we given any thought or consideration to reaching out to Tubman Fire Company?
We have.
And finding out if we can get some fire police?
We have. Yeah, they're not. There hasn't been any interest.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So we offered that as a paid position and volunteer. Custodians, we are short 3 custodians, 1 at the elementary school second shift, and 2 here at the intermediate middle school second shift. From a transportation perspective, we are still 2 drivers short with bus transportation to have a full contingency of bus drivers. So that is still a concern for us. And then substitute teachers, we have 14 substitutes that are active substitutes that have substitute for the school district this year. Out of those 14, 5 of them are daily substitutes, so they come to the school every day, working in the school district. We actually are short 1 at the elementary school, and then we have 2 at the intermediates. Let me back that. Out of the 5, there's 1 at the elementary school, 2 at the intermediate middle school, and 2 at the high school. We're short 1 here in this building, and we're short 1 at the elementary school. So we have 2 daily subs that should be coming every single day that we're short right now. And then we have 9 regular subs that are just kind of day-to-day fill in if we call them. And out of those 9, there are, give me 1 second here, I apologize, I forgot the number off the top of my head. There are 4 that are really active. 5 out of the 9 have subbed less than 5 days out of the school year so far. So we did a job fair. We did that last week. We had 5 potential hires spread out between transportation, custodian, substitutes. So that was good. Better than none. I'll be the eternal optimist and say, hey, well, that's 5 people that walked through the door that expressed interest. So we're going to, I can't stress to the board enough that this is absolutely a concern. It is something that we've been dealing with as a district, as an administrative team, as support staff backfilling and supporting each other, as teachers backfilling and supporting each other. But we are not in the position that some other of our colleagues are. And so I take that as a grain of salt. There's a lot of school districts that are in a position where they are giving up teachers that don't have prep, and all the specials are cut on a regular recurring basis. And those specialist teachers are becoming regular ed teachers, and teachers don't have prep anymore or lunches because they have to go backfill in for a classroom, and there's not a regular ed teacher, and they're just hodgepodging staffing together. So it could be a lot worse. It's not sunshine and roses here, but it could be a lot worse. We have been very active in our approach to trying to recruit people, job fairs, emails, Indeed, working with actively contacting our local universities to see if we can find staff. I know Mr. Volker has absolutely had his pulse on that of Kutztown, Alberni, all of those local universities. We've actively been trying to recruit and fill some of these positions, whether that's substitute positions or these LTS positions or permanent contract positions. So I'm not trying to paint a sunshine and roses picture that there's nothing wrong. Again, a lot of the credit goes to all our staff. I mentioned earlier, but I'll say it again, our administrative team, the teachers that there's coverage periods built in and they're using their coverage periods to support and backfill. And there's times when some of our ancillary services, like a Title I or something like that, have been reduced to be able to backfill and fill a regular ed classroom for the day. So, and then, again, I mentioned earlier, our support staff that have really been, when we talk about the custodian gaps and crossing guards and things like that, that people have stepped up and supported. So it really shows when a team comes together, and it's what we're doing now. It's definitely pain points. So I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that you know the gaps that are there, that we've been actively working to solve these. Could be worse, but it's again, not sunshine and roses. Questions on this?
I guess I was just hoping to have more brainstorming on solutions. I'm not okay with you saying we're not at the worst part yet. What else can we do?
So, Mrs. Waller, it's a great point. I appreciate you raising that question. One of the things I did do today is I talked to STS, as our substitute service provider, and asked if there was any incentive programs that they've implemented in other districts that seem to be effective. One of the ones that they suggested was putting a quarterly bonus type scenario in place that would reward a substitute that was serving, we set the parameters, but a certain number of days out of that quarter, a percentage of those days that they'd be actually subbing. And if they hit that landmark, they would get an additional bonus. The nice part about that is it's not a recurring, just like a salary cost. It is built in as a bonus. And the positive that they've shared with me is that that has been very successful at retaining and incentivizing the existing subs. They did share that it didn't really help to garner any new staff, but at least helped to retain those and get those serving that were already on the list. So when you look at the 9 possible subs and 5 that only work less than 5 days, could be a possibility to attract and get some of those to work. So I tried to get a little bit more detail, but admittedly ran out of time today to be able to get, what a appropriate proposal would be to the board for dollars and time and things like that. So I'll be following back up with you as a board to make that recommendation if that's something that STS thinks would be a good way to recruit more staff.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea, a good first step. I went on to pretend that I was going to apply for a sub position in a Berks County school on STS's website, and we get a pop-up, and Exeter School District gets a nice little pop-up, and Exeter is paying $145 a day, and we're paying $110 or $110. So I mean, which one are you going to click on if you're, thinking about subbing?
So I know at the superintendent meetings, we had talked about this, whether it's substitutes or it's starting rates for custodians or it's any staff. And we have to stay in the market. And we have to make sure that we're attractive, while at the same point recognizing the budgetary limitations that we do have, because staffing costs are our biggest driver of costs, and we only have so many dollars to be able to work with. And one of the major concerns from us as superintendents is someone raises the rate this time, and now I'm going to raise my rate a little bit more, and then I'm going to raise my rate a little bit more, and it starts to escalate to a point of unsustainable levels. And we're seeing that with bus driver rates, we're seeing that with, starting to see that with substitutes where districts are kind of one-off raising at a pretty high rate, like you mentioned, Exeter. That is higher on the county side than most. I think most are right around where we are, 120-ish, somewhere in that dollar. I don't have a dollar. We actually, we're putting the survey together at that county level to see what everyone is paying, just to have some kind of level playing field, so we were all on the same page. Again, so we weren't, there's only a certain number of people that are out there, and so we weren't trying to steal from each other.
I hear what you're saying, Laura. I guess from what I'm understanding is there's an actual physical people shortage as far as certified teachers. So, I mean, even if we would just say, let's say we match what Exeter's offering or bump that up an additional $20, are there enough subs out there to support that? And from what I'm understanding is there's not. So
We're not graduating as many teachers, and I also don't think that the limit of hours per week helps, because people want 40 hours, and being limited to 29 and a half, it's very difficult to have people come in every day to the district. So that doesn't help either.
Explain the limitation of 29 and a half.
Is that from Obama, I believe?
For the healthcare.
So, when you get to 29 and a half, anything above, you have to provide health care. So a lot of districts can't give every sub that comes in health care, so they limit them to 29 and a half. So a lot of the part-time staff, that's their max hours.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Are
Yep.
are the building subs held to that same standard? Are they a contracted position?
Because we contract, we're able to work around some of those issues, which is nice.
Meaning, yeah, and we can't even tell those spots, so.
Right, they do a 12-month look back instead of doing it on a 2-week or the school year basis. And because they're not school employees, they can use the 12-month window instead of the school day window.
So on a week-to-week basis, we can have them work more than 29 and a half, but we still don't have to pay benefits. That's what you're saying, right, because of the look. Okay, thank you for clarifying. So, I mean, folks know I'm frugal and I don't spend money easily, and I don't think money is always the solution. Having said that, I would ask you, in your 8 or 9 years as superintendent and quite a few more in education prior to that, have you ever seen a staffing shortage as significant as we're experiencing now?
No.
Okay, and I think that many of us, you know, the supply chain shortage, the staffing crisis, it's across industries, and it's multi-layered. I appreciate Mrs. Wallazer's push, if you will. I think we're doing all sorts of things, so this isn't a criticism in any way. I just wonder if we got perhaps a brain bank together, you know, some folks who have some passion and energy and ideas around this, along with maybe a recruiting expert or a compensation specialist who could coach us and guide us on how to structure maybe some new and innovative approaches, so that when we do come head to head with another district on a good candidate, we win that battle, so to speak. Or when we are looking out in the marketplace at the few candidates that might be available, we are able to woo them. The point about these folks just aren't available, so many people went into retirement or opted out of the workforce through the pandemic. At some point, I imagine they could be incented to re-engage, at least some small portion of them. What's it going to take to incent folks to re-engage? And so sometimes money is the answer. Other times maybe it's benefits, maybe it's perks, maybe it's incentives. I don't know, it just seems to me that, to your point, saying that we're doing better than our peers is reassuring. It could be a lot worse, and I think we all understand that. Having said that, I don't know this district to be okay with mediocre. And again, I'm not suggesting that, what's going on is mediocre, but typically we don't feel okay with good enough. We strive for excellence, and what I'm hearing, given the list of open vacancies, it doesn't sound like we're achieving excellence in terms of the delivery of education, given all the open positions. I don't know how other folks feel about that.
To your point, I agree with you in terms of the not being satisfied, not being able to provide that level of additional support that we can offer right now because of some additional grant funds, the ESSER funds that we have for the next 3 years. There's a lot of opportunities that we have right now. I think one of my biggest challenges is that I see is I think like you said, there's just not people there.
You just look at enrollment across the state. I mean, Kutztown was one of our biggest suppliers of teachers. Look at their enrollment. Their enrollment once was 14,000. Now it's below 5,000. They're just not
there. And that's my biggest challenge in terms of, like you said, sometimes dollars does fix it. Maybe we need to at least stay competitive. But you asked earlier, have we seen something like this before? And I think any business owner probably said the same thing, like, no, we've never seen anything like this. But one of the things that's unique to education that I've never seen is the change of sitting teachers moving to other school districts. Usually when you get a contract, you're there for your career, right? I mean, you're there for 30 years. It's rare that you see people move. That is happening more frequently than I've ever experienced in my 20 plus years in education. It's really interesting to see this shift happening. Our learning support teacher that we just lost is a great example. Went to another school district and had multiple years of a GK experience. That didn't happen before and starting to happen now. And because there's job openings and people can do that.
Yeah, for me in this current market, I think retention is far more important than recruitment. So as you said, with the STS long-term subs, if we can do an incentive to keep the ones we have, that's going to be where you're going to have most success, because you are more able to job hop and career hop now than you ever were before. So if your retention package isn't up to snuff, that's where you're going to lose them, because the pool that's coming in is not as fruitful as we have been used to. So I think, yes, we need to continue to come up with a contingency plan on how to recruit new subs and new teachers, but I think our focus really needs to be on retention of those that we have, and I am thankful that everyone is, willing to be all hands on deck with that, including crossing guard support and that, because that's the only thing that's going to get us through this bubble. I mean, it's going to have to pop at some point. What that fallout is, no one knows, but I think to focus on retention we're going to have the most success than trying to. That's my dissertation.
So why don't I kind of some next steps?
I definitely agree with you on that. And if I could just add one more thing, our shortage of 12 paraprofessionals also has a significant impact on the attractiveness to our subs. So yes, we're going to have you come in and sub for our classroom, but oh, by the way, the autistic support child doesn't have a need, and he's going to be hitting and punching other students in their classroom because we can't fill that position. So I think we also have to address the fact that we have not negotiated contracts with our paras and our aides and our janitorial staff, and they deserve an increase in wages as well.
So did we lose when we switched or was there a gain, like when we switched from our last one to ESS?
There was a loss and there was a gain. I forget exactly where we were not fully staffed when we left, but we're slightly less now than we were before. So I'm just gonna throw it like a wild one. I think we were like maybe 8 short before. Unfortunately, Dr. Reese is sick, but I think I'm calling her, but I think we were about 8 short before, and now we're 12 short. So within a small window of people.
But we were trending on that path with the old provider. That's
Yeah, and
part of the reason we switched.
As sad as it is, it's not unique to us. I have the same where I am, my husband has the same where he is. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's the way it is everywhere. And that's not, doesn't make it right, but I don't know where you find these people. My district is actively searching and doing all the same things that we are, and it's not left.
So I guess what I would suggest then is if you could crunch some numbers on as far as putting a retention package together and incentives for the paraprofessionals and see what we can do to at least
And what about
maintain the
our-
levels.
What about our current staff, just our regular teachers who are feeling this effect? I mean, do we know what their temperature is on this? How are they feeling? I mean, they're taking the brunt of this too. Are they making sure that, you know, they're getting the support that they need? That's what we get.
I think it's hard on everyone in education right now.
Yeah, I know. I just hope that we're addressing that. That's
So, it's such a situation that, I mean, a lot of it, it's not much you can do. Like, you just have to like work through it and, I don't know. It's tough. I hope.
I don't believe that, Kim. I believe there's more we can do, and I'm not gonna settle just for that laissez-faire kind of attitude.
I think unfortunately, the reality is that these STS positions are paying what? What are we paying?
And STS, the sub rate is, off the top of my head, but I think it's 124 at daily sub that's here every single day, and 110 for someone that just.
So 8-hour shifts, you're looking at, it's not 15?
Wait, is that for the daily staff or for the paraprofessional?
The sub.
Okay, I thought you asked the para.
So 15, 18?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I mean, you can theoretically go out, find a job at Amazon for $21.50, what is it now? FedEx pays 25.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin' Donuts on
McDonald's.
Bridgetown Road, you want to be an
I mean-
assistant manager, they pay $20 an hour.
Yes.
I mean, you can start CDL in no time at all, and they both, I mean, people are doing that. They are doing that. They're literally leaving their areas of expertise to go into these areas that are paying ridiculous amounts of money. It's happening. They're seeing that transfer into other, so that's part of the reality. Again, where do we draw the line? Where do we say, like, what do we say, 21.50? That's what Amazon's paying? You know what I'm saying? To incentivize people to come? I mean,
So John, just to your point, the math is 110 a day divided by 8 hours is 1375.
Right.
So if we expect a guest teacher or a substitute with a college degree to sit in our classrooms for 1375 an hour,
yeah.
to your point, why if they're going to do that, wouldn't they sit behind a computer and do telemarketing calls for $18 an hour or something else for $18 an hour?
But we can hash that out, 6 ways to Sunday. There's a million, like I said, there's a million places. If you want to jump careers, now's the time to do it. So I guess what I would ask is, Andrew, if you could come up with some sort of proposed structure for the board to review for both incentives and recruitment, from whatever data and success stories you can find out there, and then present that to the board, and we can hopefully take action at next month's meeting.
I would also encourage us to think outside of education. So again, there are recruiting specialists, there are compensation specialists. We could hire someone or engage them to do a very small project in partnership with us to help us find creative approaches to finding people. We're good at finding educators. We know how to find educators when they're available. and we know how to sell them on working for Brandywine. But if educators aren't available, then maybe we should leverage other resources and ideas from experts to help us find retirees, as an example. How about Brandywine alums that go back 20 or 30 years? We've got to have databases of who these people are. We could do a mailing, we could do a telemarketing campaign, we could do all sorts of stuff to try and woo someone to say, hey, we have actual volunteers that come in our buildings all the time. What if we started to pay those volunteers 10 or 12 or 14 bucks an hour? I guess I'm just saying, in your approach, be as creative as you can possibly get, because what we've historically done probably isn't going to work as well as it has historically, because we're in unprecedented times right now.
Correct, and if we figure it out, we'll make tons of money because we can sell it to every other individual that's out there, because it's just a shortage of people. I mean, I hear what you're saying, think outside the box, but literally anywhere you would want to work currently, you could go and they would pay to train you. I mean, it's outrageous, so.
One thing I just want to point out to my colleagues is,
I'm sorry, Ted.
go ahead, Ms. Walter.
I was just going to say, my only other suggestion would be our retired teachers pool. If we personally reach out to them and let them know, I know they're very scared of the technology piece, and they feel like they're going to have to know how to do Google Zoom to Zoom for these kids at home. But if we reach out to them and say, look, it's not like that anymore, and our classrooms are safe, and everybody's wearing a mask, would, from the bottom of your heart, be willing to come back into the trenches and help out our students and our district, because they're not motivated by money. They are doing it for the goodness of educating children.
So the one thing I was just gonna say is just, not to be the party pooper, but I'm gonna be the party pooper. A lot of the ideas have great validity. I think that, we really do need to take a look at this stuff. However, we are gonna be coming into budget season. We only have so much money. That is something that I think everyone should also think about when we're addressing these shortages. I'd love to pay everybody $250 a day. I think that'd be fantastic for the substitutes. But, and I'm just using a number, Ms. Yoon. It's not an actual proposal. However, the reality is we have to make sure that we have enough money for this. And if we don't have enough money, that means we have to give up something someplace else. So, I do think that, like I said, it all has validity, but I also want to remind everybody that, the other part of our job is making sure that we're financially responsible with the taxpayers' money. All right. So I think we need to take that into consideration on whatever decisions we make.
I agree, that's why I made that, sorry.
Yeah, here. Couldn't agree with you more. I also am aware that every day we go with a vacant position, that's a cost savings. One that we'd rather spend, frankly, but every day we suffer through a vacancy that creates a funding source to help recruit someone to start, day one forward. We also have grant money that we've never had access to, at least not in my tenure, 10, 11, 12 years on the board. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grant money to fund these positions. The longer we go without funding those positions, that grant money is unspent. And at some point, 3 years from now, we're going to have to either give it back or spend it fast. And so how frugal I am, but to me, that this is an opportunity for some creative modeling around staffing and compensation to see if we can't solve it. The other thing that I'm feeling is if we collectively as a community say, you know what, this is just a problem that we're going to have to suffer through, then to me, we should step back and really look at how do we deliver educational services rather than just continuing to try and do it the way we always have without the resources that we need to be successful. Then to me, some brainstorming around, all right, how do we do this without people? How do we do this properly or well without those resources that we're always relying on? And that gets into some whole crazy discussion, which makes me really uncomfortable, frankly, but perhaps you too. But Do you see what I mean? But I think continuing to do what we've always done is not the solution right now. We've got to try some different levers.
So, then I would just ask if you come up with a proposal and we can review it at the next meeting and hopefully take action and have lots of success.
Is this something that we possibly like form a committee for, like have like a little brainstorming group to come up with ideas for how to solve the staff shortage problem?
Well, I think the committee's already in place. We have a negotiations compensation committee. And so I think that mechanism is there. I think what the next step would be is to evaluate this, look at the different staffing options that are available. This would be a point of, what could we look at creatively, and then put some proposals on the table for the negotiation committee. That way it streamlines some of that conversation points, if we can do the research ahead of time for you.
So we can expect that for next board meeting, because I feel like this is an immediate need. I don't think this is something that can go very long.
No, I think that's the, what Mr. Wagman had asked, is that would be prepared for next board meeting. So in between now and next board meeting, we would try to get together with that negotiation committee to share some of the ideas and then crystallize what that final version would be to the board.
We're gonna meet on the 25th. We're gonna get together on the 25th, Laura, okay? That's Thanksgiving, I'm teasing.
I was just saying, I'm looking over my calendar, like,
Yeah.
that's funny. That's
Yeah,
Thanksgiving.
that's Thanksgiving, I'm teasing. We will get together though.
So yes, we'll have that for next board meeting, and compensation committee will meet, and if there's any input, any additional ideas anyone comes up with, by all means, shoot them on over. And
Actually, since I have my committee here, Ms. Walters on the phone. Do you guys have availability for November 11th in the afternoon? Evening, 5, 6 o'clock?
With all due respect, we have an audience. Would it be all right if we powwow quickly after the meeting so that we can adjourn and release these folks while we?
It takes 45 seconds, just let me know. But yes, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm available.
Okay, right on.
all right, any additional comments? Oh, yes. Roll call?
Mrs. Henry? Yes. Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mrs. Wallheiser?
Yeah.
Dr. Carter?
Yeah.
Mrs. Eisenhart?
Yes.
Mr. Wagaman?
Yes.
7 yeas, motion passes.
Any additional board comment? Any additional comments from the public?
Just a final reminder, tomorrow is election day, and Mr. Reitmauer has joined us, so he is one of the candidates that is on the list. So best of luck, sir.
Thank you. And thank you again to all of our board members. Thank you again for your service. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night.
See you, Laura.
Laura, do you want to stay on so that John can schedule the meeting?